Sentence fragments. Another error you're bound to make in pursuit of more sophisticated sentences, especially when it comes to writing good description in your literacy narrative for Writing Project 2, is sentence fragments. See what the textbook has to say about sentence fragments, and then also consider how Martha Cohn and Robert Funk define a sentence in Understanding English Grammar. They say, a sentence is a word or group of words based on one or more subject, predicate, or clause patterns. The written sentence begins with a capital letter and ends with terminal punctuation. They add all sentences then are clauses, but not all clauses are sentences. This is the case with sentence fragments. They are clauses, not sentences, because they don't have both a subject and a predicate, what Stanley Fish would call both a doer and a doing. While there are a number of different kinds of sentence fragment errors, one that often pops up in descriptive writing is the ing fragment. Here is an example. She was always the center of attention, everyone's eyes focusing on her walking in the room. In using this kind of ing verb form, that sentence or clause, the second one, cannot stand alone. It's a sentence fragment. If you have trouble identifying sentence fragments, one way to determine whether or not it's a fragment is to read the sentences backwards. So if I read, everyone's eyes focusing on her walking in the room, right away that would stand out as whose eyes, right? Because we know that it's referring to she, but that's only because we saw the other sentence first. But if we read the second sentence first, we would clearly see that we don't know what the subject is. There isn't both that subject-predicate relationship. Here are two ways to edit the example to ensure that there is both a subject and predicate and eliminate the fragment. So one would be to keep the ing forms of the verbs, and instead of having a period and a capital letter and making that a second part, a second sentence, just going ahead and attaching it to the end of the other sentence with a comma. So basically taking the two sentences and combining them into one. This does not create a comma splice, notice, because, again, the second part is a clause. It's a fragment. It's not a complete sentence. It doesn't have both the subject and the predicate, or the subject and the verb, the doer and the doing. Or another example is to go ahead and change the form of the verb and the verbs and make it a separate sentence. So instead of the ing forms having walk and then focus, and so it reads, she was always the center of attention. When she would walk into the room, everyone's eyes would focus on her. And again, so we also added the subject. So the subject is crystal clear. The verb forms for the predicate are crystal clear as well. So we know in both sentences we have a doer and a doing, a doer and a doing with two verbs. So make sure when you're adding details, which you absolutely want to do in your narratives, that if you happen to, when you're revising and editing, notice any ing fragments, to make sure to edit them accordingly so that all of your sentences are complete sentences.